Hello friends. Now today the next topic of anatomy, and that is about the 10-mark question from paper first, and this topic is the topic of temporomandibular joint. The name itself indicate temporomandibular means temporal bone and mandibular joint between temporal bone and mandible. We know it is one of the most active joint in the body. It has good many functions and it's working throughout the day. So this joint is a joint between the two bones. One is mandible and second one is temporal bone. This is a joint of condyle type. It is a condyle type of synovial joint. Now about the articular surfaces. The joint is formed by, as we know, the joint is formed by two bones. The upper bone is temporal bone, whereas the lower bone is mandible. So the upper part of the joint, or the upper surface of the joint, or upper articular portion of the joint is formed by a fossa. A fossa of which bone? A fossa of temporal bone. For which the fossa is made? So that mandible can get easy fitting in the fossa. So the fossa of temporal bone for mandible, ultimately it is called as mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. And there is one eminence. There is one eminence of the temporal bone. So that is temporal eminence and the mandibular fossa of temporal bone are playing a role as upper articular surfaces of the joint. So the lower articular surface of the joint is formed by a bone, mandible. Which part of the mandibular bone? The condyle. Condyle of the mandible. So this is how the formation of means bones which are taking participation in the formation of joint. Now we know each and every joint is supported by the ligaments and the muscles. As the temporomandibular joint is much crucial and more working joint, it needs more strength. And that strength is provided by the four ligaments of the joint. In anatomy, there is one rule that the joint's first ligament is that which covers the whole joint. And that first ligament is also called as fibrous capsule of the joint. In the same sense, that capsule is present here. So the first ligament of the temporomandibular joint is fibrous capsule. Now the second ligament is temporomandibular ligament. What is the name of ligament? Temporomandibular ligament. Means the ligament which is having attachment at a end with the temporal bone and at the another end with the mandible. That is temporomandibular ligament. Third ligament is spinomandibular. What it mean by spino? Sphenoidal bone. Third ligament is having attachment at a end with the sphenoid bone and at the another end with the mandible. And fourth ligament of the temporomandibular joint is stylomandibular ligament. Now what it mean by stylo? Stylo means styloid process. Styloid process again of the temporal bone. Styloid process, you know, there are two processes, one is mastoid and one is styloid process. So that styloid process, this stylomandibular ligament having a attachment at the styloid process and the another end of the ligament attached with the mandible. So these are the four ligaments of temporomandibular joint. One is fibrous ligament, second you can say fibrous capsule, second one is temporomandibular ligament, third one is spinomandibular ligament, and fourth one is stylomandibular ligament. Now about the articular disc. So it is a disc. It is a thick band in between two articular surfaces so that it can help to prevent the friction between these two bones means one mandibular fossa and second the condyle of mandible. In between these two, there is a disc, and this disc is called as articular disc. This disc is very tough and helping the joint throughout the life. This disc is made up of, is divided into 5. Take 2 thick bands. One is anterior, one is posterior. Now put one thing in between these 2 thick bands. And what to put? Intermediate zone. Now go in front of the anterior. Go in front of the anterior thick band and write there anterior extension. And behind the posterior thick band, you can find their bilaminar region. So these are the parts of the disc. Number one, anterior extension. Number 2, anterior thick band. Number 3, intermediate zone. Anterior extension, anterior thick band, intermediate zone. Number 4, posterior thick band. And last is bilaminar region. Bi means 2, lamina. One is there as a anterior thick band. One is at the posterior thick band. Anterior thick band is here, posterior thick band is here. In between these 2 thick bands, there is a zone that is called as intermediate zone. Anterior thick band, posterior thick band, in between these, there is an intermediate zone. In front of anterior thick band, there is anterior extension. And behind the posterior thick band, there is bilaminar region. This temporomandibular joint is supplied by the branches of superficial temporal and maxillary arteries. This is the blood supply of temporomandibular joint by 2 arteries, superficial temporal and maxillary artery. Now, the temporomandibular joint is supplied by auriculotemporal nerve and the mesenteric nerve. So, this is about the temporomandibular joint. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching the video. We will be back soon with a new video of anatomy.